Here to tell you a little story about the RV. We were getting a little bit of a pulse in the electric, that at nighttime the lights would dim down and then pulse back really bright, and then they would dim back down again as we were driving down the road. It didn't seem to happen when it was plugged in, so after calling Foretravel, discussed it with them, they said it could be one of two things are the most likely culprit. One is the alternator, which we have a replacement one here. If I can get my finger to line up, there is the replacement ones from Lee Neville. The previous one was a 130 amp alternator, was original equipment, manufactured in '98. The new one is manufactured as of 2019, but it's brand new. And it's a 160 amp alternator, but it's a direct replacement, should bolt right into the same spot. So what we're gonna do is unhook the old one today and then install that one, and then show you how to do that. And then the other thing we're gonna do in another video that they said could be, and I went ahead and bought it anyway, just because I like to spend money, right? Is a new battery isolator. Now the isolator that we have also looks to be original equipment. There's parts in there, resistors, diodes, different things like that. They can keep the, can't think of the correct term there, but keeps the battery from spiking and causing problems. It was about, directly from Foretravel, was around 180 bucks. I'm sure you can get them cheaper on Amazon or other places, but I wanted to make sure it was a direct replacement, as close as we can get to original equipment as we could to put on the coach. So I'm going to be doing that in another video, but currently here's how we're going to get started with the new alternator, and hope we can get it mounted on without much struggle. All right, the first thing I did, whether right or wrong, is removed this tensioner pulley that was putting pressure here, and to do that I just loosened this nut on the back of this thing, and it popped off. Obviously it's rusted a little bit. It's got a peg that holds it in that hole, and so eventually I'm going to have to figure out how to get it in there and crank it down and get the tension to lock it back in place. But I pulled that off. I'm going to have to hang on to that, and then that frees up the tension on this belt enough that allows this main belt to come off at the end of the alternator. And it's a good idea to take a picture of how all these belts go, or else you may end up getting to the end of this thing and wondering how the hell it goes back together. Before I start messing with the old alternator, I'm going to go turn off the power to the 12-volt systems, unplug the coach, unplug the batteries, because there are electrical components connected to the back of this, and I do not want to get electrocuted by touching the wrong terminals together. Not entirely sure if it would shock me or not, but you know what? I'm not going to take the risk. So I only see three major points that this is connected. Again, one here, one on the other side, and then this one. This was actually didn't even have anything on it. We'll have to end up putting a bolt back on that, but that wasn't even there, which makes you feel all warm and fuzzy. This is a 1/2 inch to go on this. That'll take that one off, and then we'll get it off. And then this one's up here. I've got looks like a 15 mil that goes on that with no play. I don't know whether these are the bolts they used or what, but I'll be using that to take those off up there as well, in the front and the back. So we'll get those off. This is the back one, and then there's the one in the front. Probably get it loose enough to do it by hand. Surprises me because this thing is 23 years old. And the bolts they don't make them like they used to, let's say that. But once I get this loose, I want to flip it around the back side of it, make sure I got a good picture of the back of how the wires are connected. But this new one, being that it's from Foretravel, the manufacturer of the coach, they've assured me this will bolt directly on, is what they use in their shop as a replacement. So this should be a fairly easy swap without any kind of major modifications. Looking at the back, flip this around, you can kind of see it's red line. Assuming that's the black line there, but we'll put those back the same spots. Looks like it's got the same areas for all the other posts, so we'll just line them up and put them back on the same way as this other one. As you can see, the one that they sent. This is why it's important to try to see you get a direct placement for something like this. There's the back of this one. It's got the 3 posts. The other 2 parts there. That's got a positive for the red and a negative for the black. So it should be a pretty easy swap. I am going to have to try to figure out how to get this monster wheel off of here. and pull off that other piece. But I'll work on that here in a minute, and then we'll load it back up. Well, I'm not sure, but I'm not a betting man. Maybe I am. But I'm gonna guess that was the problem. I unscrewed the positive, the negative, and this post here, but I went to unscrew this last post and the thing just crumbled and fell out of the back side of this other spot here, so I'll have to take it off and get it put on the right spot on the new one. The new one did come with new nuts and of course new posts and everything, so I don't care about that, but that may have been why it wasn't making a good connection. If this thing is just so wallered out or rusted or whatever the case is that it just wasn't making a good connection, that could be the problem I was having. I couldn't get it off of there. It was on there like a bear, and what I went ahead and did was I called up O'Reilly's Auto Parts. I'm sure AutoZone or Napa or any of these other ones could probably do the same thing, and I dropped it off with them, the old one, and they're going to take it to their machine shop and get that pulley pulled off of there with the correct tool, so it doesn't damage it. And then they're even going to mount it on the new alternator for me, which is going to be nice. I just didn't have the tools to do it. Some of them come off easier than others. This one being on there for 23 years, man, it was fused, and they couldn't even get it off in the shop. So they're going to try, if they can't for some reason get it off with all their tools and it wasn't meant to come off, and in which case we'll have to be calling the Foretravel place and having them send us a new one, which I'm tempted to do anyway. But I'm not going anywhere for about a month, so I'm going to go ahead and give them a day to ship this off, and then we'll see what they come back with. Well, here we are about a week later. I had a problem with the old one. Could not get this pulley off. Took it to O'Reilly's. They couldn't get it off. They sent it to their machine shop. They couldn't get it off. I then thought, well, I'll give it one last shot, and took it to a guy that works on alternators. 30 years in the business, this guy. Alternator shop. He looked at it. He could get it off. No, he couldn't. So I had to call Foretravel. You would not believe, you would cry if you knew how much this little pulley on the end of this little tiny pulley. Shipping tax, $160. You think I'm getting screwed? Yeah, somebody's getting screwed. It's probably me. But anyway, it is all now back together and ready. You gotta have it. So it's all brand new. We've upgraded. We've got a 200 amp battery isolator brand new put in there. And now I'm gonna clean up the wires, and I've got to then reinsert this alternator back in. I know it's a direct fit because it came from the people that built the coach. They said this is what they use as a direct replacement when people bring them in, so I know it's gonna fit. It looks like the holes are gonna line up. They're all on there in the same ones. I've marked that one with electrical tape just so that it's not actually electrical tape together. I've just marked it with that so that I know which post it goes on. So I'm gonna connect all those back to the posts and then see if we can't get it mounted up. Battery's off. A couple of these terminals didn't look too bad. I've cleaned off the positive and the negative, but they actually seem like they're in pretty good shape. So I think we're ready to go ahead and put this dude together. Okay, I got these middle two put on here where they belong. That's exactly where they came off of on the other one. Now, I almost made a rookie mistake, and that was trying to hook, thinking this was, oh look, it's red wire, so that must be positive. Well, no, it's not. This is the negative wire. This one is actually the positive wire. Both the wires are red, but I know that how they came off. This one that was in the shroud here and has the red heat shrink on it is the positive. The positive with the black wire, it looks like black wire, but it's not. So you got to make sure you remember exactly which one's your positive, which one's your negative. On this side, the positive one is this post over here, and the negative is this post over here. So this negative one here with the black shroud, like it came off the other one, is going to go on there, and the positive one is going to go back on this same side that it came off of, right there. So we'll get those on there, positive to positive, negative to negative, and get those cranked down. And these are got 1/2 inch pieces on there. Now I'll straighten out all the wires, probably off camera here, because we'll have to tilt this thing up and get them all straight down, away from each other, crank them down, and then probably go ahead and spray them with some of that terminal spray, just to try to keep the corrosion off there as much as I can. And then we'll pan out and show how to mount this thing back up here in the bracket. Okay, to get this thing back on here, it's going to go on with the same bolts. I didn't buy new bolts or anything. You think that they'd charge me for that too, a couple $100 a piece, but we're going to use the same old bolts. One's going to feed through this front, same way as before, and the other one's going to feed through the back. And then we're going to tighten them down on there, just snug them on there just enough that I can then adjust the bottom to get this angled bracket put back on the bottom. And it's heavy, but I think once we get it started, on the front and the back, it'll kind of hold itself in place here. This back one has a self-tightening piece on it that when you crank down on it, it's going to kind of snug that in there to help keep it from vibrating apart. Now it comes time to get this piece adjusted and tightened in here with this existing piece that we had that came off the old one. It goes behind the alternator and against this piece over here. And they use a couple different sizes. Kind of just finger tight it on here just to get it started. And then this back one, of course, doesn't line up on there, which is convenient, but that's okay. This is what sets it, gets it where it needs to be. So we'll line that up and feed that in through the back. The old one was so covered up, I was kind of perplexed as why there wasn't a nut on it. And I see now it's because it's all threaded from this side. So got those tightened up. That's in place. New alternator's in place, belt's in place. But aha, the little tensioner pulley is not in place. So to get this in place, we got a couple different ways we can do this. But one way that I think I'm going to try is to start this screw in here, and we're going to use a ratchet strap. And we're just going to actually pull it down to put the tension on that and get it exactly where it needs to be, and then lock it in place. Got my ratchet strap on here. I'm going to slowly crank this until it gets into place. As it gets down on there, I'm going to tighten this down. That's going to drive that peg back into that hole where it needs to be. Once that's all snug down on there like that, release the tension off the ratchet strap, and it holds it in place. Hope you've enjoyed this tutorial on how I just installed a new alternator on the RV. Valkyrie out.